Please welcome CEO and founder of Millat Group, Hamza Farooqui, in conversation with Skift CEO and founder, Rafat Ali.
Hamza stole my shoes, so I had to buy the shoes again. No, that's not true. He gifted these to me, so that's what that was. Thank you, Michelle. So, what statement are we making here today?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Africa has arrived. Africa is ready to execute. It's about execution. The fact that we have Skift, the global independent voice of travel, the voice which every institutional global private equity investor uses as the compass of allocating capital, is here, is in South Africa, is in a South African time zone, I think says this is the time, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you again, Hamza, for your friendship and for your support for us to be here. You're very passionate. Obviously, I've seen that over the last few months that I've met you, and then obviously spend the last 3-4 days with you. When people think about Africa from an investment perspective, the risk becomes sort of the biggest word that people throw around. We had that in panel before as well. What's your sense of the risk versus the reward today, as you as a local homegrown boy here, build your business brick by brick, literally. And so in terms of the risk versus reward, and then I want to talk about obsession with Western companies, etc., coming in versus local homegrown entrepreneurs and sort of supporting them as part of the ecosystem as well. So I want your views on both of those.
So I think we have to understand where the world is today, right? 10 years ago, risk and risk premium was incredibly challenging. But the world has done us a great favor. The private equity world was a spreadsheet, financially engineered world. In today's time, if there is no operating capability, you have a fundamental challenge. And I think the world is seeing that. And that's the answer to dealing with risk premium, operating capability. You will be able to deal with risk if you have operators and jockeys who have operating capability. If there is no operating capability, then you will never move from the mantra of risk premium. So my view is the answer sits in operating capability, in entrepreneurship, and unleashing that in real terms. And that's one of the reasons why, right? Some of the biggest private equity players are all talking about operating capability. My view is that answer is going to be an engine of growth for Africa. The issue around homegrown versus global is a great question, but capital formation is very challenging, right? South Africa is deeply illiquid markets, right? Capital formation is still very difficult. And it's difficult for a number of reasons, right? Because where domestic capital providers have a very limited vantage view, and that exacerbates itself in just an ecosystem which frankly backs existing players who've been there for very long. The arrival of the new guy to come in is significantly challenging. But hey, that's business, right? That's how the world works. And Millat's view has been, well, if you say that you're good, then deliver. And for me, that's been the mantra. If we say that we're that good, then we need to deliver, we need to execute, we need to build execution capability. And I think today, and what we're trying to build is all pieces of those building blocks to make this country, this continent so very relevant. Because Rafat, I genuinely believe in that. I'll tell you one thing. I asked the team when we were doing this function that we're going to start with the national anthem. Not because I just wanted... I do get goosebumps every time I listen to the national anthem. But there is something very special about this country. And you know what? It's God's grace. It's a few national anthems which start with a prayer to God, that God bless Africa. And that's my conviction, that's my belief, and that's why I believe Africa and this country is going to rise, is going to happen, and its time is now.
In terms of hard product and the soft product, sort of airline industry, the hard product is the seats, etc. Soft products is the service. But you can generally understand. So this is the hard product, right? Then there's the hard product that you build, which is for people to host and come to your properties. Then there's the soft product, which is the service part of it, and hospitality that we talked about earlier as well. In ranking of hard product, I don't think the God-given hard product, I think we have that covered in many ways. The other two, man-made hard and soft product, your sense today of the challenges there, Southern Africa, Africa in general?
So it's not where it needs to be, right? Because that's a function of training, that's a function of where the ecosystem is, that's a function of exposure. Rafat, some of these people come to work from shacks without having staff uniform ironed. Some of them work in hotels and restaurants and don't have access to proper meals. That is the challenge our industry faces. So you can't expect that guy to pitch up and say, look at customer centricity, look at Smile. And that's why there is a need to reset that dial. There is a need to reset how we treat people. There is a need to reset how we create an ecosystem where that customer centricity is real. But do I believe it can happen? Yes. We are a very small example of that in our hotels. And inshallah, we'll get a chance to do more in this country. But if we can do that, if we can unleash that potential, the fundamental of what South Africa stands for, Ubuntu, the principle of care, customer centricity is there. Right? We didn't need to build the world's tallest tower. We didn't need to build a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We brought people here today and showed them God's grace on Table Mountain. This was not capex heavy, right? So that same thing applies to talent and labor. But there is going to be a need for policy to change. There is a need for people to understand skills training needs to be focused. It's not just theoretical. It's about practical. And one more thing, right? I've learned this. You are not going to train South Africans by putting them behind a computer screen and telling them this is what you need to do. You're going to train South Africans in role play. You're going to train South Africans in real terms. You're going to train them when you lead from the front. Those are all things, frankly speaking, corporates in South Africa battle with, because most corporates tick the box, do e-learning, e-training, and that's not going to work. You're going to unleash people who don't have heart and soul. And this industry and Africa needs heart and soul. So those are the reasons I think will fix the soft part. And why I think this part of the world has the most biggest opportunity, right? New York City, you're not going to build an F&B concept out in New York City with all the union challenges. Africa, you can. South Africa, you can. It just needs the pieces right.
Is tourism as a career in the hierarchy of things like in US, etc., is very low. What's the sense here in terms of the young people and tourism as a career?
When you have 40% unemployment and no other chance, I will take the tourism. But we need to create the sense of dignity in tourism. So these people are unemployable because they just don't have any other options. Tourism is the biggest absorber of jobs. And I've said it before.
Yeah.
Mining reframed this country. Tourism, God willing, will reframe the next century and decade. But we need to have the will. In our country, what's the biggest challenge, right? We'll deal with the hard industries. We'll deal with mining. You look at the government's plan around Operation Vulindlela. Tourism will never sit there. But tourism is the biggest sector which can create the impact, the biggest sector which can create the jobs. And this country needs the jobs. So the ability to absorb is there. The people are there. We just need to have the will and the execution.
You also sit on the board of WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, or XCOM, whatever it's called. And obviously, you're sitting with investors and CEOs from all around the world. What do you hear? And you are, I guess, the lone voice of Africa there.
Yes,
which is a bit, which is great, but also a bit of a pity. And so, the WTTC came to Rwanda 2 years ago, so I guess that was their nod to, yeah, sure, we were here. What's your sense of the sentiment of global and you've hosted global CEOs here? The Hyatt CEO came and visited as well. What's your sense of the global CEOs when they look at expansion plans? Everybody talks about Asia, India. I mean, certainly all those hotel CEOs are talking about Asia, India for sure.
So I think the world generally, this industry has a skills issue, right? Because it is very low down the radar. But that's where the ability to create a labor platform, Africa with its young population, these are going to be skilled people who can be in other parts of the world. Sure, you then end up in an issue of open policy, immigration and borders. But Africa is going to also unleash not just travel in and outbound, but create a skills base. One of the things Mark Hopler-Mason speaks so very actively about Africa is to say Africa's talent pool is going to be very exportable. And an example of that is Dubai today.
Yeah.
Go look at
Yeah,
Dubai
true.
and go look at South African labor. Go sit at some of the hotels. It's South African labor which is sitting in those hotels. Go fly our planes out. It's the Middle East carriers, and a lot of them have South African labor. So our labor is very exportable. Right, we just need to get that mindset right. Need to build that engine right, and I think Africa will not just be a begging bowl. Come to my country. Right, one of the reasons why this mega trend is so important is the African traveler is going to set the travel wallet for other economies,
Right.
and that's why being in Africa is so important. And I think not just from a travel wallet, but also skills perspective, the African employability is going to be an engine of travel growth and a solution. Europe, they don't want to work in travel and tourism. Right?
Yeah.
Look at where Italy has recently opened up to other Southeast Asian markets. Africa is going to be that provider of labor because we're a young population. And I think those are opportunities we've got to open ourselves to. Policymakers need to align themselves and open themselves up to.
One of the things you brought up, Middle Eastern thing that you're very passionate about, and you helped me think through this corridor, travel flow corridors concept that I wrote about, that I think it has tons of legs underneath it. Explain sort of why you're very bullish on the Africa Middle East corridor, and how you're thinking about building that. How are you incorporating that as part of building the next phase of your company?
So a couple of things. Airlift is a challenge in Africa. And let's be clear, as much as there are African carriers, I don't think the African carriers are going to solve airlift. Propulsion is in a great space. You've got extended range aircrafts coming. I see the Middle East carriers being the solution to solve Africa's airlift challenges, but we need to open policy for them, right? Middle East carriers are currently the solution, which are driving huge engines of growth, connecting various parts. So African policymakers have to accept that, have to adopt that. And so I think the Middle East market is going to be the catalyst for aviation growth, which is a driver into our inbound and outbound market, and we need to accept that. We need to work with them. We need to enable them in the market. Sure, the European carriers are there, but the Middle East carriers are very important drivers. They're close, 6-7 hours out, and I believe they're going to be a very important driver of that. I also believe the Middle East is going to be a very important capital provider. If you look at proximity, if you look at the pools of capital which sit regionally in the face of the sovereign wealth funds. And then I think, and I say this very often to the Middle East leadership, is you've built a tourism ecosystem. You've built economies built on tourism. But your infrastructure is going to be filled by those African consumers. Go look at the GCC carriers, the amount of lift they're picking up of tourists from South Africa into the rest of the world. So I think all of those factors are going to be very important drivers. And I think the creation of that corridor then lends itself to reciprocity, right? My view, America, I think, has had its challenge. Europe is suffering over tourism. It's this belt, right? Africa, Middle East, connecting that very smartly
India,
to
I guess
the
I
rest
would
of the
add
world.
there, yeah.
And then you've got India and China, right?
Yeah.
Which all become increasingly compelling. So if I look at South Africa's numbers at 2-3 million international travelers, there's a huge opportunity. But someone needs to go out and execute. And execution is what's missing.
Is it true that there's no direct flight between all of South Africa and India?
Yes.
That just blows my mind. Like, how's that possible? 1.4 billion people in India, tons of Indian origin people here that live here. What just happened there? Wow. Because God is saying that do not go there. Okay. But that just blows my mind, right? I mean,
And that's the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
If you look at India and China, and again, I think South Africa, again, is got God's gift and grace. I think we're a seriously under-marketed, under-positioned destination. But hopefully that will change. I think the internet has helped us. I think social media, AI, the permission to be discovered.
yeah.
My concern, though, is if we miss all of those things, we may not have the permission to be discovered. And I think that will be a travesty of justice.
Do the online platforms like Booking and Expedia, etc., do they understand this part?
So I don't think so. I think they sit in these markets like how many corporates sit, where they just are present and they, really sit and make P&L. It's very similar to the hotel brands, right? They're all here, but there's no operating capability. They flag a hotel and they earn a management fees and they're gone. No one intentionally is after creating an ecosystem, right? And the ability to build that. It's what I've always said about America. The American system works because there's an ecosystem, there's private capital, there's a proliferation of talent, technology. But I think those pieces will come together. I think those pieces come together will unleash a very strong Africa. But a lot of those pieces are very siloed. My view in South Africa is we are not collegial enough. It's me, mine, mine, mine. This story today was not a Millat story. It was about Africa being on the map. It was about this country being on the map. It was about being unconditional. And I think the day we can be unconditional, success will come to this continent and to this part of the world.
In terms of AI, we showed some slides about AI adoption. One of the narratives in the West is the AI adoption is necessary because labor issues and just the sheer number of people are decreasing and people not in the labor force. Obviously, that, I guess, on paper is not an issue here in terms of just the sheer number of people that can be employable. So then how do you think about investment in AI versus, taking out labor costs, etc.? How do you think about that?
AI is going to be the solution to take that unskilled worker and make him hugely productive. Problem is we haven't understood that. We think AI is simply going to replace the people. It will not replace the people. It will make that South African labor much more smarter. It will make them efficient. It will cover the gaps which traditional skills and training won't. Again, AI is seen as a total replacement. It reminds me of where the internet was in the old days. And I think we can't overhype it. How we place AI, how we overlay it to make our people, to make our organizations smarter, better, appropriately deployed is where the solution is. And I think for South Africa, that AI adoption around skills enhancement and optimization is where the opportunity is, not replacement.
Okay, so we're out of time, but I want to end on a fun question. Which African countries are playing in the World Cup, the football World Cup coming up in US?
South Africa is playing?
South Africa, Senegal, Ghana, Morocco, Egypt. Tunisia is there? Okay. Who's going to go farthest?
South Africa. Mr. Trump won't be very happy with that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know what's coming.
How many of you are planning to go to US or were thinking and are just too disgusted not to go at this point? Many of them. Yeah. Christian is saying, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's what it is. But I'm excited for the football World Cup to be in the US and 50 countries. The tickets are very, very expensive. But I bid for the Morocco games, but I don't know if I'll get the tickets or not. What's next? What are we doing now?
Back to work, lots of work to do, scale, execution, and, Rafat, hopefully this country and the ecosystem will give me a chance to do what I'm deeply passionate for, not because I want to have a profit motive, but I'm at this space where I want to build something special and I want to contribute to this country. My family came to this country as immigrants, first generation. This country is special to me. So I want to build something special,
Inshallah.
And leave a lasting impact.
Yeah, well, your father's sitting there very proud. So thank you, Hamza, and thank you, folks. Thank you for coming.